Welcome to the Black Gates. In today's mod spotlight, the Chaos Warriors of Khorne seek to kill, maim, and burn the followers of Tzeentch in this Chaos Civil War. In this battle, we will be using the Ultimate Chaos mod, and I will actually be facing off against the creator of the mod, Really Big Hammer. And now, without further ado, skulls for the Skull Throne. And now we're here with the showdown between the forces of Khorne and the followers of Tzeentch. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army compositions, and we can go from there. So for my leadership, I do have a Chaos Lord of Khorne, so this guy is an absolute monster of a duelist. He has 486 weapon strength, and on top of that, he does have the Kill, Maim, Burn ability. So it's on a 2-minute cooldown, and it lasts for 30 seconds, but while it's active, he gets 50% weapon damage, 50% to his melee attack, as well as 50% to his charge bonus. So he becomes pretty juiced up, that's for sure. On top of that, he does have the Heroic Killing Blow, Deadly Onslaught. So if you pop all three of these abilities at the same time, and you're able to stick him on an enemy lord or an enemy caster or pretty much any high value target, he will just tear them to pieces. So definitely very cool and thematic of Khorne, and on top of that, he does have the Thirst for Slaughter. So when enemy units are nearby within 70 meters, he gets a 20% speed boost. So it's definitely helpful for kind of keeping him on his target, as he's not the fastest unit with only having a 35 move speed. On top of that, I do also have a Bloodthirster of Khorne, so that was something that was added in the most recent mod updates. So now you can bring the greater demons rather than having to bring them as your really expensive lord, because this guy costs like 7,000 or 8,000. But you can now bring them as a lieutenant, so it's a slightly more toned down version. The exalted Bloodthirster of Khorne is the kind of a legendary lord version, and this guy's the lieutenant version. But guys, he does some serious work. He's extremely fast, has big mass, can push through units. But one of the ways that they were nerfed in the most recent patch is, you guys probably remember the Nurgle versus Khorne battle we had a ways back, and just seeing this guy just run shop. But their leadership got lowered quite a bit, so now they function in the same way that undead do. So for example, if they get surrounded or rear charged, and they can essentially crumble, which is very, very good and definitely helps to nerf these guys a little bit. But aside from that, in the front line, I do have a combination of the Warriors of Khorne, which are just kind of the standard rank and file, and they do have the Frenzy, which is the signature of Khorne, but the standard Warriors of Khorne do not have the Endless Frenzy, so it can wear off and it is conditional. But guys, these are the big papas. These are essentially the chosen of the Khorne units. They have a weapon strength of 62, but they have Endless Frenzy, which means it's not going to wear off. They're immune to psychology, and they're just going to be pissed off the entire battle. But they do have a true anti-infantry bonus of 20, which is insane, and 66 melee attack. So I really like these units. So this makes up my whole front line, kind of the core of my army. I do have 2 champions of Khorne right here, so these guys are going to be assisting my lord in the assassination duties. So these guys are literally just single fisting just this giant great weapon. They also have a shield, a silver shield. So 476 weapon strength with a bonus versus infantry of 15. So the bonus versus infantry and frenzy is kind of the recurring mechanic on the Khorne units, which I like quite a bit. They do have the kill, maim, burn, so if you get these guys tag teaming with the Chaos Lord of Khorne, they can do some serious work. On the side here, I do have a Forsaken Giant, which is kind of basically just like a regular giant. The stats are very similar to the traditional vanilla giants, but they do have frenzy. That's kind of what makes them different. So cause fear, terror, all that kind of good stuff. So these are kind of like the Khorne cultists. These are the followers of Slaughter, and they're pretty cool. They have very high weapon strength, but one thing they definitely lack is armor piercing damage. So when they're fighting, you can see their AP values are 0. So when they're fighting against like heavily armored like Tzeentch or Bringers of Change or things like that, they're not going to get much work done, but they make for pretty good fodder units and are very, very cheap. So I have all the followers of Slaughter who are going to be joined over here by, I think, yeah, just traditional Forsaken, but they have been slightly reskinned, and man, they look incredibly cool. So these Forsaken here are definitely going to do some work. On the far side, I do have the Fleshhounds of Khorne. So these guys are the new and improved Chaos Warhounds, and just look how freaking giant these guys are. So they actually have an anti-infantry bonus, which is pretty cool. It's only of 6, but still nonetheless, for like a really fast Warhound type unit that has 115 speed, these guys do some serious work. They have the ward save of all demons, but they do crumble like demons. So their leadership isn't the best. It's 60s, and they tend to crumble pretty quick in most of these battles we've played. Because again, guys, if you just look at like the Skull Takers, a lot of these units like stand alone, they might seem like overpowered, but each of the different Chaos Gods has some absurdly powerful units, guys. So don't worry about that. Over here, we do have the Bloodletters of Khorne. So these guys, again, a demonic unit. They do crumble, but they are monsters. They have 65 weapon strength with a bonus versus infantry of 15. They have ward save. They're immune to vigor, as all the demons are here in this mod, and they do function in a similar way to undead. So I like these guys quite a bit. 2 hell cannons in the back. I do also have some Knights of Khorne who definitely are looking very, very, very savage up here, ready to go collect some skulls of these Tzeentch followers. The second hell cannon, more of the Bloodletters of Khorne, followers of Slaughter, and on the far side, Forsaken. So that's pretty much it for my army. So let's go ahead and look at the forces of Tzeentch as they march out of the gate. So you can see in the front here, he does have some Knights of Tzeentch, which are definitely, they're cool looking, but regardless, they're very, similarly balanced to the Knights of Khorne. For his leadership, though, this is where things get. It looks like a giant parakeet, but he has the Exalted Lord of Change. So this is like this is the greater demon of Tzeentch. This guy is just look at all the different magic he has, and he has some insanely powerful spells. So much like the Bloodthirster can essentially just chase you into oblivion and just massacre you with his fists, this guy can massacre you with his spells if you leave him alone, but I'm definitely going to be hunting him with the Bloodthirster. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get my paws on him. He has the Lore of Heavens, he has Tzeentch magic, he also has the Lore of Shadows, and Immune to Vigor, you know, has all the similar traits of demons, massive missile resist, really good magic resist as well, and is not a pushover in melee either. So we'll be seeing how my opponent can use those. My opponent does also have some Chaos Spawn here. For his main infantry core, he has some Chaos Cultists who are coming out here. They're basically like Flagellants. They have pretty good weapon strength of 36, and they're dirt cheap too, so they make for some pretty good fodder units. But now let's get into the really cool, juicy Tzeentch unit. So in the back line, he does have the Warriors of Tzeentch, and man, look how cool those helmets look. He definitely did some really good work texturing these guys. So these guys, the Warriors of Tzeentch, so what makes them unique, they don't have Frenzy or Anti-Infantry, but they do have flame attacks as well as magic, and they do have a ward save. So that's what makes them really durable and really, really tough to kill. And you can see mixed in here, these are the pink cores of Tzeentch. So I'll try and show you guys them later, but they're kind of like these casters. They work very similar to Iron Drakes in that they are like breathing perpetual fire, and they are a menace, guys. They do some serious work. So let's actually pause here and show you guys for just a moment. So they have 99 ammunition, so they don't run out. Missile damage of 205. They have the demonic qualities, and they do a ton of damage. You guys will get to see them in action as well. The elite Tzeentch units, let's go ahead and find them over here in the back. The Bringers of Change. These guys are very cool looking. They kind of have the Forsaken arms with like a bit of a chosen look and these big, awesome, great weapons, but they have a bonus versus large. So against like large units, against my Bloodthirster or things like that, they'll do some great work. So these are kind of like the equivalent of the Skull Takers of Khorne. So he does also have the Champion of Tzeentch right here, I think. Yeah, this is the Champion of Tzeentch. So what they have is the Sorceress Bolts, and this ability just wrecks house. Definitely does some work. So, guys, my apologies for the long-winded introduction. There's definitely a lot to show you guys, and you know, as I do future battles in this mod, I won't go in as much detail once you guys get to know the units, but you know, as we get it rolling, I'm definitely going to touch base on things. So, he also does have some mounted cultists over here. So these are basically just like fodder cav. They're just like chaos cultists who learn to ride horses, I suppose. So, guys are pretty cool. Definitely good for harassing, and if he can get back onto my hell cannons, he's going to be doing some serious work. So, he is marching out of the mighty black gate, so very Lord of the Rings themed going on here, but I think it's pretty cool thematic battle, you know, scenario. So he's marching out on me right now, and my forces here in a moment are going to be advancing. You can see the Bloodthirster as well as the Chaos Lord, and everyone is definitely ready to claim some skulls. They got a little bit bored of my rambling here. So you can see the Sorceress Bolt's already shooting in. He makes really good contact with my Champion of Khorne, and unfortunately that Greater Demon has his eyes set on my Chaos Lord of Khorne. You can see that my opponent is targeting him with one of the Exalted Lord of Change's heroic cast ability. So I tried to do a little bit of a side strafe ability right here, but you can see the missiles are coming in pretty hot and heavy over here. They blast through those warriors, and they actually tag my Lord right in the back, take him down about almost half of his health. Granted, those abilities are on a really long cooldown, so that's one of the things that makes Tzeentch really strong, is they can do these big bursts of damage, but they are on long cooldown, so he can't abuse it too much like you could in the original, you know, circumstances here. But you can see my Bloodthirster is charging in here, and he does absorb the bolt of the Greater Demon. He cares not. That does about 8 to 10% of his HP damage, and this guy's just, he wants blood. He's sick of this big bird, and you know, he has the cooler wings anyway. So he's going in there, he's going to chase his giant warp parakeet in here, and he's just going to push through the troops. You can see the cultists are going to try and slow him down a little bit, but he is not having any of that stuff. You can see he just massacred these guys, and then he just pushes through. So I was like, okay, I need to shut down Tzeentch. I cannot let his Lord of Change just blast me, and look at him just march through those knights. That is so incredibly cool. So he's going to go after there and just chase down this Lord of Change, and basically the entire battle I just have this guy kind of pushing after him. You can see some cultists and some other guys who are kind of, you know, trying to stop this guy, but with the kill, maim, burn, he's going to be quite a monster. So you can see the pink cores of Tzeentch over here on the far side are lighting this giant demon on fire, and that is a cool looking shot, just seeing this giant Bloodthirster on fire as he's like massacring all these warriors here on the ground. So definitely some neat stuff there. So in the front line, you can see the Warriors of Khorne are going to engage with these cultists, and you can see the cultists just getting bashed into oblivion. These guys, this is exactly where they thrive, just massacring lightly armored units like this. You can see some Tzeentch magic going off on the far side, blasting one of my Champions of Khorne. But guys, this is where the money shot is, seeing these Skull Takers come in here. So the Skull Takers are going to engage with these standard Warriors of Tzeentch, and it is not going to be a good trade for them, because again, they have those heavy anti-infantry bonuses and those big old great weapons, and they're going to get in there and do some great work. So you can see after a moment, I did take a bit of a charge versus his two groups of infantry, but once the bat fighting really gets started and pitched, things are definitely going to go a little bit better. So you can see my champion in here as well, kind of assisting these Skull Takers, and he has some really good splash damage as well. So he's definitely going to be killing, maiming, and burning. Yeah, killing, maiming, and burning. So unfortunately in the back, you can see my Bloodthirster is going after his Greater Demon, his Exalted Lord of Change, and it's doing a really good job of chasing him down, but he is just getting roasted by those pink horrors, taking quite a bit of damage, but still nonetheless, he's trading very evenly with that Exalted Lord of Change. But my opponent very wisely pulling some troops down to try and tar pit my demon. So if we go over to the front of the battle, you can see my my Bloodthirsters in here, or Bloodletters, excuse me, doing a very good job kind of working through my opponent's infantry. And also on the far side, you can see my Forsaken Giant is doing some great work. Although he is fighting against some Chaos Spawn, this is definitely not a problem for him. He's got a pretty big axe, so he should be fine. Over here, the followers of Slaughter definitely in a pretty good situation. They definitely want to be fighting these lightly armored units. And the Chaos Bond definitely not doing too much. They're down to about 19 models, so that's looking pretty rough for those guys. On the far side of the map, you can see some of the knights have engaged, so my Knights of Khorne have been surrounded by a bunch of cultists, but they should be able to kind of beat those guys back, because the cultists are very lightly armored against the high DPS of, you know, these Khorne cav who do have the frenzy, but you can also see the Knights of Tzeentch here doing some pretty good work. So I actually had to detach some infantry to help out, because I was completely surrounded. I was actually losing that battle. It was pretty one-sided. So over here, you can see the Bringers of Change racking up some pretty good kills, up to 37, trading effectively against my Followers of Slaughter, as well as some standard Warriors of Khorne. So things are not looking good on the side of the battle. My opponent definitely winning because, you know, again, he sent 2 groups of his elite infantry. But over in the middle, things are looking a lot better. I do have this Champion of Khorne as well as my Chaos Lord here. So he's just going to be getting in here and just massacring these guys with his massive great weapon. And man, I really love the texture of this guy. Khorne, I have to say, I really like the way the Khorne units look in Nurgle. I think the Nurgle troops look really cool with their like scythes and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, the Champion of Khorne getting in here, and he's just going to be chopping some skulls, getting some nice splash damage. So you can see he sends those guys back to the Shadow Realm. I have collapsed the middle of the line, so I am also sending my Warriors of Khorne now to the back lines of Tzeentch. And, you know, again, a lot of their troops are actually running back through the Black Gate, back to Mordor. And over here, the Bloodletters of Khorne are just kind of chasing down the scraps. But here's the big demonic battle. So you can see some of the Forsaken coming in here, and look at that awesome ability. So he's using the demonic channeling. So check that out. So he casts that big aura, very similar to the cinematic, and essentially just refreshes his winds of magic. So definitely makes him very strong. But the Forsaken Giant has come in here, and it's gonna be some straight up Godzilla versus King Kong action going on. So you can see the Forsaken Giant just chopping down on him, also hitting some of those Bringers of Change and kind of temporarily dazing that Lord of the Change. Over here, my Bloodthirster is doing some pretty good work, but he is a little bit tar pitted, and he's been taking a ton of damage. You can see he's actually almost dead because of those darn pink horrors over here. So these guys are really cool. You can see he retextured the Dryads, because again, the modding tools in terms of, like, you know, actually changing the models, you're pretty limited with what you can do, but he did a really awesome job making these things look like Tzeentch horrors. So over here you can see my Bloodletters as well as some of my Warriors of Khorne and Skulltakers have gotten in here, and these poor little pink horrors of Tzeentch are not going to have much of a lifespan here. So the Followers of Slaughter also got over here, and this is a situation in which they can actually do something, because their AP values are so pitiful that they really aren't very good versus a lot of the mainline fighters, but nonetheless are doing pretty well. So the Knights of Tzeentch over here kind of fighting one of my Champions of Khorne. He's a little bit surrounded, but I love the fact that he has that great weapon in one hand and then the shield in the other. It definitely looks really cool. So he's taking those guys down, but still a pretty good job for my opponent kind of surrounding that guy. So let's take an overarching look at the battlefield. So you can see my Chaos Lord is actually almost dead. So that blast from his wizard earlier on did some pretty good work, but nonetheless, he was able to stay and fight and racked up, you know, 31 kills against some, you know, heavily armored targets in the front line. You can see some Tzeentch magic wildly shooting off against those Black Gates over on the far side. And here the Champion of Khorne is continuing to fight, but he's pretty heavily surrounded. And a lot of the Khorne troops here in this particular pocket have been taken out by the Tzeentch troops. The Tzeentch troops are surprisingly resilient. They do have that ward save, which is, you know, very easy to kind of underestimate. Because when you look at their raw stats, you're like, oh, they're not as impressive as Khorne. But when you get that ward save kind of mixed in there of 20%, they can really, really perform. So at this point, you can see the Lord of Change is definitely in full retreat. You can see the Followers of Slaughter are chasing with their weapons out, and the Bloodthirster, you know, a little bit lacking over there. But he's actually crumbling. But so is this Lord of Change. He actually has 71 HP. So Big Bird is trying to scurry over here to some of his knights to get some help, but guys, this is the way they nerf the big demons, because otherwise it's so hard to kill him. But that crumbling has been taking a ton of damage. So guys, the mighty Big Bird is about to fall here in a few seconds. You can see he's on his last limbs here, definitely going to go back to the warp, and down he goes. So he falls. Definitely took a bit of a beating from that Bloodthirster as well as that Forsaken Giant. So I'm sorry, Big Bird, but you put up a good fight. But I had a feeling he was going to bring the Lord of Change, so I was like, okay, I need my Bloodthirster. But the Bloodthirster, guys, he's almost dead too. I mean, he took a ton of damage fighting that guy. And on top of that, those pink horrors were just roasting him the entire battle. The Forsaken Giant over here did pretty well. I think my opponent needed to get the Bringers of Change, who are the anti-large units that Tzeentch has, because the Bringers of Change would have massacred these large units. They have really good weapon stats versus large. But regardless, guys, that appears to be it. You can see all of the Tzeentch troops, the Bringers of Change, are routing to these Bloodletters on the far side, and that is going to be all she wrote. So the forces of Khorne were able to take some skulls for the Skull Throne, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that battle. You can see the big performers here. The Skull Takers really, really just cut it up in the front line and outperformed the Bringers of Change in terms of just raw stats. Aside from that, the Bloodletters, 136 and 71 kills. You know, the Pink Horse didn't get a ton of kills, but they really blasted my my Lord. Also, some of his Cav, the Knights of Tzeentch, I felt like he invested very heavily in Cav. Granted, they didn't pay off as much, but, you know, the core line was, you know, pretty even. The Chosen Swordmasters, who are monsters, actually got taken out by the Hell Cannons for the most part. So all these kills are on these very expensive Chosen, so I think that was largely why they didn't get a lot of kills. But regardless, it was a pretty wild battle. It was just straight up King Kong versus Godzilla with the Bloodthirster chasing down the Lord of Change. That was definitely quite a bit of fun to see. So very well played to my opponent, Steel Blade. So guys, go check him out on YouTube. His channel is actually Really Big Hammer. So he goes by Steel Blade. interested in his internal modding, but his YouTube channel name is Really Big Hammer. So definitely go check him out. He's going to be doing updates, and there's a bunch of new features coming in. You can actually play the Ultimate Chaos Campaign co-op now. So you can, one of you can go Nurgle, one of you guys can go Khorne. You can do a lot of cool stuff. And guys, I will be doing a playthrough of the campaign, of the Ultimate Chaos Campaign, as soon as the Norske comes out. So when Norske comes out, I want to jump into a campaign with Wulfric or with Throg. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to go pretty deep into an Ultimate Chaos Campaign. So guys, thanks again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that Khorne versus Tzeentch showdown. And guys, more content coming soon.